Hi again, fellow unlicensed thinkers. This is going to be a little bit outside of what I normally do, but at the end I will talk a little bit more like I usually do about the psychology of what I think is going on. So I've been following this AMC stock for a while, and I looked at it and I saw, hey, that does look like there is potential for a short squeeze to happen. I think that opportunity has ended. Now, just to clarify, nothing I say in this video is going to be considered financial advice. I am about as far from a financial advisor as you can possibly get. But what I do is I try to think through things critically. And in the case of what's going on with AMC, I think there's a lot of emotion tied to it because a lot of people are looking at how can they possibly get rich from this, and I completely understand that. And like I said, I've been following it, and initially it looked like it was going to be a good candidate for a short squeeze. So I just want to use the small voice that I do have here on YouTube to be whatever counter I can to all of the hype that seems to be overlooking some very glaring contrary arguments, but they're just getting glossed over, and I think that has to do a lot with the psychology, again, that I'll get to later, but people they of course really don't want to be wrong, and they have subconscious biases towards whatever they believe. Now, maybe I do too. Sure I do, of course. But I'm open to anyone changing my mind. So if you have a good counter argument to what I'm going to present here, I would love to hear it. Because if you can change my mind back in the other direction to believing what I believed before, great. I'm not opposed to that. I've obviously already changed my mind once, so there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to do it again. Just try to make sure that they're good arguments, because there's just been a lot of, anytime someone has a dissenting voice or a countering opinion, there is this immediate attack with name calling, and that seems to be pretty common in our society today. And so the way that generally tends to work is, if I call this person the demonized name, whatever it might be for that particular situation, then I no longer have to listen to them. I no longer then have to go through thinking through or listening to what their opinion is, and so I can maintain my beliefs no matter how cognitively dissonant they may be. I guess I got to the psychology sooner than I thought, but you know me, I can't help myself. So again, I do in fact hope that I'm wrong in what I'm seeing here, but unfortunately I haven't heard any good counter arguments, and I do hope that I am at least able to provide somewhat of a countering voice to all of the hype that's going on, because the last thing I would want to see is people handcuffing themselves to what is potentially a sinking ship. And again, not financial advice. I don't think AMC is ever going to go down to nothing. I don't really see that as a possibility. So, will the stock maintain what it is now? Probably not. I think that it'll go down from there. But again, I don't know anything. What I do know is how to look at evidence and how to think critically, and that's what I want to present here, is a couple of arguments about AMC and about this potential and the news that has come out recently. So the story behind that, for those that don't know, is this looks like, it looks like it's going to have this potential squeeze because there is an estimated, previously estimated a whole lot of synthetic or fake shares out there that the hedge funds created and would then have to buy back. Long story, I don't want to get into it. This is more for people who understand the way that works. So then AMC said, well, what we're going to release that share count on the 2nd. And that share count basically means they're going to go to all of the brokers, and this would be globally, and they're going to say, how many shares of this stock do your investors presently hold? And then when all of those brokers report, they will understand, is that number higher than the number of shares that were initially issued, or is it lower? Or I should say officially issued, not initially issued. That would be a bad way to put it. So is that number higher than the number of shares that were officially released? Okay, so Adam Aron is the CEO of AMC. There's an argument out there that says, well, he can't release the number of synthetic shares because he would get in trouble with the SEC, which is a governing body. But he did release that number. He said that there were 501 million-ish shares globally. Now, if he were only allowed to say how many issued shares there were, he would have said that there were 448.26 million, which is how many shares AMC has released. And the number that he said was 501 million, which is greater than 448 million. Okay, so why would the argument here that I would make is, why would a count even be necessary if the only information that he could release would be the number of shares that they have issued? That wouldn't be necessary. They issued. That's something that you can look up on Google. So the count wouldn't even be necessary. It would just be kind of a strange thing to do when I could just Google it and see the number of shares. But because they did that, that tells us that they're trying to come up with a number that they don't know, that they don't have an official count for. So what they're trying to come up with is a count of shares that are being held by investors. And the number that they came up with was, got Max here, the number that they came up with was this 501 million approximately. And so Adam Aron, in with Trey, that he very clearly stated that this 501 number is including all of the shares held by investors globally. And so that means that that's all the shares that they hold. Now, if these synthetic or fake shares could be counted, then there would be, again, no point in doing the count, and the end result number, exactly that 448.26 million that we did. But the fact that that number is higher says that synthetic shares can be counted. Okay, so then the argument goes, well, not all synthetic shares can be counted. And this is kind of a moving the goalpost kind of argument, because if everyone's excited about the share count, they're excited about the share count because these synthetic shares can be counted. Asking the brokers how many of these shares are held by your investors. So pretty simple thing to do, right? And then you would have to ask, so then why can any synthetic shares be counted? And that becomes the hard question to answer, is if you're going to say that synthetic shares can't be counted, well, then the number should be 448 instead of 501. Well, if you're going to say that not all synthetic shares can be counted, then we need to know, why can any be counted? What's the difference? How are some counted if synthetic shares can't be counted? And basically, again, we're getting from the brokers. How many shares do your investors hold of this stock? Pretty easy number. They just look at their computer and they say, well, this guy owns 10, this guy owns 10,000. We add those up and there you have it. So easy enough, right? But these are important questions because otherwise it's just speculation. So what we can gather from hard numbers is that, or hard information, and is that there were 501 million shares counted and only 448 shares were ever issued. So that tells us that synthetic shares are indeed being counted. So then the next argument is that Adam Aron, again the CEO of of AMC, would tell us the share count on the second. Okay, so he said that he would get it and that he would provide it on the second. And I suspect that he really thought that there would be a lot more synthetic shares than there were. I think he probably thought there were going to be, 3 to 4 times the number of shares, in which case that would be a definite candidate for a short squeeze. Instead of releasing that information on the second, as he had said, I think he got that information and changed his mind. And this is completely reasonable. I think any of us in his position would have done the same thing. I don't really fault him for it. And again, this is entirely speculation, but again, he did say that he was going to release that share count on the second. But on the morning of the third, he still hadn't released that share count, and instead he sold 11.5 million shares that AMC had been holding to make some money. Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. So what I suspect is that when he learned the number of these synthetic or fake shares was only about 50 million, then he knew that there wasn't enough fuel there for there to be a short squeeze. So he sold these remaining 11.5 million shares that they had and made a really good profit off it. Hey, absolutely, good idea. As far as a business move, that's great. You take that money, that there isn't going to be a short squeeze, so there isn't really a reason to hold on to those shares, because it would make more sense, right? For if he received this information or had any sort of way of speculating that there would still be a lot more synthetic shares than the 50 million that we can see from the data, it would have made sense for him to hold on to these shares and wait for a much higher price before he sold them. But he didn't do that. So logically, he waited till the evening of the third to release the share count to everyone because he wanted to go ahead and make that money for his company. He's the CEO of the company. That's what CEOs of companies do. He's not really doing a bad thing or anything like that. He made his money. He made his company stronger, which actually does make the company better for the shareholders. It doesn't make the short squeeze better, but it does make the company better and stronger for the shareholders. So again, I'm not talking bad about the guy. He's doing exactly what he is supposed to do, both morally and legally. That's what a CEO does. So had he on the second, before selling these 11.5 million shares, said, that's it. There's only these 50 million synthetic shares out there. And I can prove this because we get all the data from the brokers. And so there we go. That's it. Only that much. The price would have dropped. Perfectly reasonable, because people would say, oh, I'm in this for the short squeeze. And they'd be like, well, I'm going to go ahead and take my profits and get out. And so the smart move for him and his company would be to go ahead and collect what he can before releasing that data. And I think that's great. I'm not talking bad about the guy or anything like that. And sorry, I got to move my cat. He's blocking some of my script here. He has a talent for that. So if he had gotten a number like 2 billion shares out there globally, he would have likely waited and made a greater profit off of them. And this would have made selling when he did a bad business decision. So he knows that there are not more of these shares out there. And he said that. He literally in the interview with Trey said this number of 501 million accounts for all of the shares globally. Okay, so what do I think is going on? Why do we still have a lot of the big YouTubers that are in this space and talking about AMC? Why are why are they not hearing this information? They're not dumb. I don't think they're evil. I think that they're not hearing this information because they don't want to hear this information. I think that, oh, sorry. 1 second, had to unlock my computer there. Okay, much better. I think that they're not hearing this information because they have a subconscious bias towards not hearing it. So imagine that you are making money off of the hype surrounding AMC doing a short squeeze. Well, you're going to have this subconscious bias towards reading any information that you get or understanding any information that you get as continue the hype. This is still going to happen because that's where your money is coming from. You're getting all of these super chats. You're getting money from ads. You're getting money from whatever the time watched, whatever source it may be. And so if you were to go on your YouTube channel and say, oh, I'm sorry, guys, you know what? We were wrong. We got information that says this is over. Well, you know what else is over? Is all of that income that you're getting. And so I don't think this is malicious. I don't want to say these guys are out there, trying to scam people. But I will say that I've been observing body language for quite some time. And a lot of times with body language, you can not only tell that the person is not being accurate about what they're saying, or that there's a misalignment between what they feel and what their facial expressions or their body is showing, but you can also a lot of times see that they're, and this is a really weird one to explain, but there is a lot of times an indication of what people don't know that they know or don't know that they feel. And that's what I'm seeing a lot in these YouTubers. I'm seeing this dissonance between what they're saying that they believe, and what their facial expressions and their body says that they actually believe. It's this dissonance that it's really hard to explain, but once you learn to see it, you can see it, and it doesn't 100% say, oh, this is the way things are. But it is something to note, and it is important to note that I'm seeing this not with just a single YouTuber, and I do believe that some of them, like I said, they're not being malicious. They are believing what they need to believe to continue making the money that they're making. And in a way, there's nothing wrong with that because we all need to survive. But just be careful. But notice what they're not talking about in detail. So a lot of them are talking about, oh, the company's strong. They sold all of their remaining shares, so they're not going to dilute the market anymore. And they're doing all of these business changes to make sure that the company is strong. Those are great. Those are great things. But look at what they're not talking about. They're not talking about the things that I've covered here. They're not really clearly talking about how Adam Aaron very clearly said that this count of 501 is all of the shares globally held by investors. That's what he said. And it's like they're just glossing over that because, again, they don't want to have to deal with it, because dealing with that clearly means that they can't continue to make money off people believing that. So their subconscious mind forces them to believe it. And this happens all the time in society. But then we go on to the forums like Reddit. And anytime someone has a dissenting opinion or makes a comment asking a question that might seem like a dissenting opinion, they get called a demonized name. And this is something that has happened throughout history, throughout society, and is becoming very common today, is in order for me to not have to deal with my cognitive dissonance, the easiest thing for me to do is to call someone this demonized name, this put them into this category, to dehumanize them, so that I don't have to listen to them. Oh, but they're just one of those people. That's just one of them. They're out to get me. I don't need to listen to them. Listening to them is bad. But in reality, you should be able to listen to anyone and everyone and every opinion. And you should be willing to change your mind. You should be strong enough in your convictions that you can hear them out and offer them a good, reasonable, logical opinion. Test it out. Can you change their mind? That's really all I want to cover on this. I mean, there's so much more to the story and so much is going on, but at the end of the day, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're right. I just, again, in my non-financial and just using critical thinking opinion of this, the game is over on this. And I hate to say that because I know there's a lot of people that have their hearts set on making a lot of money. And I would love to see each and every one of them have an opportunity to be just ungodly rich. I would love to see that. I just don't think it's going to happen here. I don't think this is going to be it. And I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm not saying back out of it. I'm saying be careful. Make sure you're thinking critically. Make sure that you're asking, why do I like this answer? Why do I like this opinion? Why does it feel good to think this way, to carry this opinion? Sometimes you have to ask yourself the questions that you don't want to ask yourself. Sometimes you just have to go down that path and you just have to see what's there. It might change your mind, it might not. But go down that path and see what's there. No information is bad information. What you do with it, how you think through it, how you question yourself, your own motives, your own subconscious biases, that's what matters. So I wish you all the best. And again, this is not financial advice. Everybody go get rich and be sure to question yourself daily. Have a great day.